They said she was too soft to be a fighter, too quiet, too polite. But the moment Corporal Davis called her a joke in uniform, the entire base learned how silence can hit harder than a bullet. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. The afternoon sun beat down on the Marine training field at Camp Henderson. Sweat darkened the sand-colored uniforms of recruits as they circled the mat, eager for a show. In the center stood Lena Hart, 5'5", calm, still, the kind of girl everyone overlooked. Around her, 6 Marines, grinning, whispering bets under their breath. "Come on, Hart," Davis sneered, tossing his gloves aside. "You're not gonna cry when we spar, are you?" Lena said nothing. She just adjusted the strap of her glove. Her expression was unreadable. Not nervous, not angry, just present. The kind of calm that makes people uneasy. When the whistle blew, Davis lunged first. His strike was fast, a blur, but Lena didn't move backward. She stepped into it. In one seamless motion, her arm hooked his elbow, twisted his wrist, and dropped him to the ground. The crowd gasped. Davis didn't get back up right away. Then the others moved in. She pivoted, ducked, countered, each movement precise, deliberate, almost graceful. One Marine went down, clutching his shoulder. Another gasped for air after a hit to the ribs. Within 30 seconds, 6 trained men lay sprawled across the mat, stunned into silence. Dust swirled in the air, and Lena stood alone at the center, breathing steady, eyes lowered, as if embarrassed by what she'd just done. But this wasn't just about skill. It was something deeper. That morning, Lena had overheard them. The laughter behind her back, the jokes about her being too fragile for combat duty. They didn't know her history. They didn't know she'd spent 3 years in self-defense training after her father, a Marine himself, was killed overseas. Or that she'd promised his memory she'd never let anyone underestimate her strength again. But as she looked at the men on the ground, there was no satisfaction in her eyes, only sadness. She'd proven her point, but at what cost? The line between respect and humiliation was thin, and she'd just crossed it. The commanding officer stepped forward, breaking the tension. "That's enough for today," he said quietly. But the recruits didn't move. They were still processing what they'd seen. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Davis found her sitting alone by the bleachers, taping her knuckles. He hesitated, then spoke. "You could have taken my head off," he muttered. She smiled faintly. "Didn't need to." He sat beside her, rubbing his wrist. "You know, we only laughed because we didn't think you had it in you. Guess we needed a reminder." Lena didn't answer. She just looked out toward the training field, where the wind stirred the flags. "People mistake quiet for weakness," she finally said. "But quiet's where discipline lives, and discipline wins fights long before fists do." There was a long silence. Then Davis extended his hand. "Guess we owe you an apology, Marine." She shook it, firm, steady. In that moment, the laughter from earlier felt like a distant echo, replaced by something better, respect. The next morning, when Lena walked across the field, heads turned, not in mockery this time, but in acknowledgement. The recruits stood a little straighter. Even Davis saluted her first. She hadn't just knocked out 6 Marines. She'd knocked out an old belief that power needs noise to be seen. Because strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers. And when it does, the whole world listens. And as the wind carried the sound of the flag snapping against the pole, Lena smiled softly, remembering her father's words, "Win with honor, not anger." Let silence be your roar. If you felt something in this story, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories of courage, justice, and quiet strength. Because sometimes, the quietest voices carry the loudest truths.